I love the Gottmans. John and Julie Gottman are two incredible psychologists who are easily world-class experts on relationships. They have done an immense amount of research. They've written some incredible books. They talk about how to make relationships more healthy. What does that actually look like? And one of their most well-known ideas is called the Four Horsemen: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. These are very destructive communication patterns. That's how they identify it. And it's so true. It damages a relationship. Those things are very clear, serious predictors of a relationship breakdown. And contempt especially, it's one of the most dangerous signs in a relationship. They have a lot to say on that. You should absolutely check out the Gottmans' work. But I want to talk about something really specific today, because the people who know about the Four Horsemen, they're like, okay, we have criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt. Okay, so is this a toxic relationship? But they're not maybe asking, is this abuse? Are the Four Horsemen abusive? I know that the answer isn't automatically. And the thing is, in order to have conversations about domestic violence and abuse and toxic relationships, there's a lot of gray area. People don't like gray, but you need to have the ability to have a conversation with nuance if you're going to learn about this and understand it. Now, the behavior of defensiveness and stonewalling and all that, it matters. But what matters more is the function, because that's when you're going to be able to start to see whether it's toxic or abuse. Toxic, the Four Horsemen are going to damage connection. But in an abusive relationship, it actually protects control. That's the biggest difference. So today, I want to talk about how criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling show up in a toxic relationship versus how they show up in an abusive relationship, so that you can see the difference. Understanding the difference between toxic and abusive is huge. I've made tons of other content on this, but I've never talked about it from the perspective of the Four Horsemen. The questions that women really need to be asking is who has the power here and who gets repaired with and who's afraid to speak, who is afraid that they're going to get hurt, who gets to stay innocent, who benefits from all of this, and who pays the cost of you guys staying in this pattern over and over. The Four Horsemen are not always abuse, but in an abusive relationship, they are literally pillars that hold everything up. Now, for those that don't know me, my name is Lisa Sonni. I'm a certified relationship coach. I'm the author of multiple books. I'm an expert in abusive relationships, toxic relationships, and more specifically in trauma bonds, which is something that really affects a lot of people who end up staying in an abusive relationship because you feel attached to the very person that's hurting you. When you are stuck in a trauma bond or when you are deeply attached to your abuser, which is very common, it makes it incredibly hard to see things clearly. So I want this to be something that really helps people that might be confused about what they're experiencing. Now, as I said, the biggest difference really is the function. It's not just the behavior, because the behavior might look exactly the same. You may not be able to see it when you're in it, but if you can step back, or maybe there are people around you that can help you see this, or when you're out, you can reflect on it. You can't always identify abuse when you look at one specific behavior, because there's a lot of gray area and nuance. So let's say a person can criticize you. That's not abusive. Criticism is not inherently abusive. When does it become abusive? A person can be defensive, and that doesn't make them an abuser, right? And if you say criticism and defensiveness and stonewalling, that's abuse, there's context. Well, let's talk about the context, right? Because somebody who is contemptuous might be in a terrible moment and say something, and they're not operating from a pattern of control. But what if they are? Abuse is not a single moment, okay? And that's what people like to get caught up on, and abusers like you to get caught up on that on purpose. They direct you right there, talking about this one instance and how ridiculous it is for you to name that as abusive when it's just this one thing. But they want you to ignore the pattern, and abuse is a pattern. So don't ask yourself, did he criticize? Ask yourself, what does his criticism do, both in the moment and generally speaking? Because if you always get criticized over one specific thing, then the question about what it does might be that it changes your behavior. It makes you stop doing something. Are you allowed to make your own decisions? Or are you going to be criticized until you make the decisions he wants you to make? Is criticism naming a problem even, or is it just there to make her feel like crap? She feels defective, right? Where does the defensiveness come from? Because some people are really overwhelmed and that makes them defensive. But is he defensive to remain unaccountable? Is that what's actually happening? What is stonewalling doing, right? Stonewalling could be he's taking a break People who are avoidant or some people who are just in need of some space, they're feeling dysregulated. They need to kind of take an hour, take a few hours, calm down. That's not stonewalling, is it? Well, let's see, right? How do you actually assess that? How do you tell the difference? Stonewalling is something that's very specific that is meant to punish the other person. Maybe she spoke up and said, "You hurt me," so he stonewalls her for 3 days. Well, that sounds like abuse to me. That's not toxic. Toxic might be, "Oh, I need space. I'll be back later," and storm out. Okay, probably not the best way to talk to your partner, but there was a little bit in there of, "I need a break." There was a bit of communication, albeit maybe not good communication. Stonewalling is just silence for an amount of time that is perhaps unreasonable. But what does it do? What is the mechanism? What is the function? It punishes her for speaking up for herself. When do you see contempt in your relationship, right? Is it a bad moment? Is it he said one thing, or is it an atmosphere? Is this something that she's living inside of all the time where she just feels like this constant disdain and contempt for her existence, for everything she says? This is the guy that rolls his eyes at you every time you speak and humiliates you and makes you feel bad and just always it can be confused for disgust. It can be related to disgust, resentment, but it's contempt. And in a toxic relationship, the Four Horsemen are going to really damage connection, but it protects control in an abusive one. Now let's go through all of them in much more detail so you get a really full scope of what each of these are. We're going to start with criticism. So in a toxic relationship, it might be like, "You never help. You always make things harder. God, you're so selfish. You don't care about me." Those things are harmful and it attacks the person. It doesn't name the behavior. So it's going to create defensiveness. It's going to make repair harder. Absolutely. Okay. In an abusive relationship, sometimes it is more related to an identity erosion. That's what happens over time. So it's not you did something wrong. Think of it more like, "You're impossible. You're crazy. You are a terrible wife. You're a bad mother. Nobody else would ever put up with you. You ruin everything. You're ruining my life. This is why I don't want to be with you. This is why we're going to get divorced. This is what made me stop loving you." Do you see the difference? It's a campaign against her sense of self. Now, the things that I said are toxic versus the things that I said are abusive, there can be overlap. These are just examples. If somebody has a pattern of repeatedly saying those things that I said are toxic, it can still be abusive. The tricky part about all of this is that you can't see intention with your eyes. So it's really hard because abuse has a lot to do with intention and they want power and control. Somebody who's toxic might be controlling you without intending it, and it's still abuse. So we call it all these different things, but at the end of the day, the biggest focus, whether it's toxic or abusive, has to be on how this behavior impacts you. That is the biggest focus. Don't get caught up on labels if he's toxic, abusive, avoidant, whatever. If it's trauma, abuse operates from a place of entitlement. So if a woman says, "I need more help around the house," and he's like, "Well, you're never happy." The issue is not his lack of help. It's her character. It's her standards. She's crazy. She's never happy. All she does is complain. But she literally just offered a bid for some kind of connection and offered a bid for help. And he just shuts it down immediately with criticism of her character. It shifts the focus from what he's doing to what's wrong with her. That's abusive. Now, contempt is the one that I think women genuinely need to take the most seriously because it's not anger. It is so much deeper than that feeling. Anger is manageable by comparison, although still horrible. A lot of abusive men use anger as a tool, and to be fair, it's a phenomenal one. It works really well. Contempt is disgust, and there's actually a really interesting air of superiority. It requires it. You have to actually picture he's looking down on you. You're down here, right? He's disgusted. He will mock you. That's contempt. Disdain. You know the look. You know the look. You know his face. Picture his face. The eye roll, the smirk, right? He'll laugh when you're trying to be serious. There's a kind of a tone to it of you're beneath me. In a toxic relationship, it might show up when resentment just keeps happening and it's untreated, nothing's happening about it. So that can sort of turn into that. And it's still really destructive. That's not a good thing, obviously. It poisons the relationship, but it's a weapon in an abusive relationship. It is used intentionally to make her feel small. You want her to think that she's ridiculous, annoying, dramatic, stupid, unworthy of being taken seriously. That's the point. So maybe she cries. And you know what's interesting? Women cry, right? And then men say, oh, she's manipulating. He'll laugh. He'll mock you. She asks for kindness. And he's like, oh, here we go. You know, you say you want to spend more time with him. And it's like, oh my God, we spend so much time together. That's contempt. Women don't even recognize it. You hear the word. Do you know what it means? Do you really understand the examples of what contempt looks like? I know you know what it feels like, right? So you try to explain yourself and he imitates your voice. You know when guys do that? Like, me, and they come back at you. Contempt. It's humiliation. That's the point, right? Contempt, in this case, it's a tool to train you out of speaking, being yourself, having an opinion, going against him. Because after enough contempt, you're going to change yourself. He doesn't even have to do it anymore. And this is a perfect example. You go cry in the closet, right? You cry in your car, you cry in the pantry, you try not to be annoying, you don't tell jokes around him, you don't watch your shows around him, you try to become the kind of woman that he won't mock, right? Contempt teaches women to hide parts of herself that he sees as a joke. He treats her like a joke. Defensiveness is really common. And I actually think this one's kind of an interesting topic because defensiveness, as I said, on its face, not abusive. Most people actually get defensive sometimes. And sometimes it kind of makes sense, right? The feeling absolutely makes sense. Even when somebody says, you hurt me, okay? And let's say you actually did hurt them, your first instinct might be like, that's not what I meant. You want to explain yourself. But the difference between that's not what I meant or like, oh, I didn't mean it like that and you do it too, do you see the difference in that? So in a toxic relationship, a defensive person, it's really, you're blocking repair. It makes it really hard to hear each other, to actually move forward. I get that. Very toxic. Toxic people tend to be more inclined to possibly work on themselves, work on the dynamic. It comes from somewhere. But in an abusive relationship, defensive is being used. It's a weapon. It's an intentional choice to be defensive to make themselves seem innocent. They're not struggling to hear feedback, and people will assign that. So let's say you have somebody who's narcissistic, and it's like, well, they're just wired that way, right? They can't see themselves as wrong, so they're defensive, but that's their own defense mechanism. You're psychoanalyzing him way too hard. He is using defensiveness as a weapon so that you feel like you can never speak up. So if you say something crazy and judgmental, like you scared me when you yelled, or I felt scared when you yelled, and he responds with, well, I wouldn't yell if you didn't push me, or you're too sensitive, or my God, you're acting like I hit you, relax. Well, I guess I'm just a monster then. I guess I'm just a piece of shit. All of that, no more yelling, right? We're not talking about that anymore. That's off the table. Let's talk about you and your reaction. Let's talk about how you called him out. Now you have to explain yourself. You have to defend the wording, right? Or I love the debate of like, I wasn't yelling, I raised my voice. And now you have to decide what is the definition of yelling and what is the definition of raising voice. And if you say, fine, I agree, you raised your voice, suddenly it's like, okay, see, I'm not that bad. Okay, you shouldn't be raising your voice at me. Are we ever going to get back to the topic at hand? No, because defensiveness protects his feelings, but more importantly, it protects him from consequences, which is what he wanted. Now, the next one is stonewalling. And this is where I was describing, yes, it's shutting down and going quiet. Sure, absolutely. But there's more to it. There's a refusal to engage for a reason. He walks away, storms out of the room. He gives one-word answers. He gives no answers. He is gone. Emotionally, not there, which sometimes stonewalling, I'll tell you, maybe just for me, I loved when he stonewalled me because it was actually very peaceful, because on the flip side, it was relentless talking at me. So stonewalling didn't actually work for him because when he would try to, I enjoyed it. So it became, how can I wind her up? But all this to say, toxic relationships, stonewalling, you might feel very overwhelmed. You don't know what to say. You're avoidantly attached. I get it. You're flooded. Fine. A lot of people don't have good relationship skills. And interestingly, men have a very big gap in their relationship skills. So when they get flooded, sometimes they don't know how to stay in the conversation. And I'm not saying this to defend people who stonewall and shut down, but they need a break. If it was a man who was more toxic than abusive, he would say, I need a break. He would say, I can't have this conversation right now, even angrily. Fine, toxic. I get it. But it's not punishment, because he would recognize that there still has to be a point of repair. But in an abusive relationship, stonewalling is coming from a place of control, right? He removes warmth and he refuses to be affectionate with you, and he won't touch your arm, or he won't make the coffee that he usually makes in the morning. He doesn't think of you for dinner that night, whatever. He doesn't call you during the day. He's removing it on purpose. He is cold, making the whole house feel cold and feel his wrath, frankly, ignores your texts, whatever. Those guys that are like, and they sleep on the couch when you never ask them to. And the saddest part is that so many women experiencing this, when you're deeply attached to a man like this, and many women are, when he goes to sleep on the couch, it's worse punishment because all you want is for him to sleep beside you and put his arms around you and tell you everything's going to be okay. You want repair. And if he did attempt to repair, it would go a long way. But he doesn't want repair. He wants you to feel the punishment so that you learn whatever happened before that. If it was you said something hurt you, whatever caused this, that he's saying is your fault because you whatever, he's doing it on purpose. He wants you to know that your behavior was bad. And if you do that again, he'll do this again because this is unbearable. And for so many people, obviously, stonewalling is unbearable. If you bring up something that this guy did to you and then he shuts down for the whole night or longer, you get nervous and you're like, oh no, and maybe you apologize, you drop the issue, you start doing some kind of work to get him back, to get back to the good version. There's a lot going on inside your body at this time, and I have made other content on that, but it is physiological. Okay, you are looking for the relief. You need that dopamine hit of getting him back. So you start working hard because you're in a trauma response right now. So guess what? The stonewalling worked. It taught her that anything that is her bringing up her feelings, her perspective, it makes him disconnect. And that sucks for her because that's the opposite of what she wanted, so she stops. So in abuse, the Four Horsemen actually move the problem away from him. That's the function, okay? So when you look at the individual examples, don't get caught up. Criticism makes her the problem. Contempt makes her feel below him. Defensiveness removes his accountability, keeps him so innocent. And stonewalling punishes her for speaking up or being autonomous in any possible way. If you come into your relationship and you bring up a real issue, something he did, something that hurt, doesn't matter, whatever, you need repair in some way. After the Four Horsemen show up or any combination thereof, the issue is gone because now it's your tone, your timing, you're too sensitive, your memory, you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. I never said that. You made that up. You're going to talk about your anxiety. You need therapy. You need medication. You're crazy, right? You never let things go. God, you're such a problem. You're such a nag. This is why it's so damaging because people look at couples and they see relationships and they think bad communication or toxic or mutual toxicity, mutual abuse. No, women in abusive relationships are actually dealing with a system that makes his behavior something that is unsafe to talk about. It is a huge lack of accountability. And it's the most crazy-making thing because I'm telling you, men are always going on about women not taking accountability when men do not take accountability for their own behavior. Their behavior and their lack of relationship skills causes tons of problems. And then they flip it and say it's on the woman. Now, before anybody willfully misses my point, it's not that women can never be abusive. I hate that I even have to say that. Remember at the beginning of this, I said you need nuance to really understand this. The topic of this video is men's abuse of women. Somebody else can make another video on women abusing men. If you feel so inclined, feel free to tag me. This is not the content that I make. I recently did a series on all of the relationship skills that men lack that women pay for. And I strongly encourage women to go look at that because you're going to see those skills missing in abusive men. But I do want to point out, don't you dare send him that video and say, see, these are the skills you need to learn. There is no benefit to an abusive man to learn those skills because the lack of those skills is what he benefits from. It means he never has to take accountability. Women are taking far more accountability. Yes, there are women that don't. I'm talking about the ones that do. Now, the Gottmans talk a lot about antidotes, complain without blame, take responsibility, self-soothe, build appreciation, turn toward each other, repair. Beautiful things. You're not going to catch me criticizing the Gottmans. Absolutely not, right? They are amazing. Those are beautiful in a relationship where both people are operating in good faith. And the Gottmans say that. They don't talk a lot about abusive relationships. That's not their thing. I get it. I don't talk a lot about healthy ones. In abusive relationships, antidotes are a burden. And it always gets placed on the victim, right? She needs to soften her complaint. She has to say it differently. What words can you use differently, right? You need to appreciate him more. I will never forget the first time that my abuser and I ever sat in couples therapy. And I think I knew, there was a part of me that knew that I needed to let him go first and sort of, okay, you start, so that he felt heard. And I actually intentionally looked for a male therapist because I had a feeling that he would probably do better hearing it from a man. My mistake to hire a male therapist. Not all male therapists are bad. This one was terrible because all we ended up talking about for 5 straight sessions was I needed to be more respectful of him when he was abusing me. But I didn't say the word abuse because I didn't recognize it at the time. But it was I need to appreciate him. I need to show appreciation, because if he doesn't feel appreciated and I could make him feel more appreciated, then the behavior would stop. But that also put it on me. We never questioned well, what do you mean he feels unappreciated? You do everything. How can he feel unappreciated in a house where his partner does all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the child raising, and literally everything, plus helps him at his job where she doesn't work, right? What? It's crazy. But that's what happens when there's a lack of training, when you're just looking at it from the people in front of you are not in an abusive relationship when they very well might be. You encourage people to take responsibility for her part. Yeah, in a healthy relationship, that's necessary. That's why couples therapists really need to be doing much better assessments for toxicity and abuse. Otherwise, you're going to give people the worst advice. So she's told, stay calm, use better timing, use a softer tone. And he is literally using criticism and contempt and defensiveness and stonewalling to avoid accountability. So she's communicating healthier in an unsafe system that makes her feel completely trapped. How amazing. The problem isn't that this woman in these relationships, right, that we're lacking skills. The skills are being used in a relationship that's abusive. That's never going to get better, ever. So how do you really tell the difference between toxic and abusive? That's the question. Can he take responsibility? Does he care about the impact? Because toxic people can. Can he change without punishing you for saying that he needs to change? Are you allowed to disagree? Can you bring up something he did that hurts you without him flipping his lid and getting upset, shutting down, creating a big thing and using Darvo? Or does it just reset and there's no accountability? If you feel fear, if bringing something up is okay, let me think. Bring it up today. It's going to be a problem. Maybe I'll bring it up tomorrow. No, wait, he's got that thing. Okay, Friday, I'll bring it up on the weekend. Oh, I don't want to ruin his weekend. I want to bring it up on Sunday. Oh, if you're doing that, which so many of my clients are doing that. If you're doing that, this is abuse, very clearly. If you are married to someone, if you are in a relationship with someone that uses your reaction as proof that you're the problem, see, you always get mad. Do you see? You always, whatever. You never using those statements that the Gottmans themselves would say are awful, right? And again, not inherently abusive, but in this dynamic, absolutely abusive. Is this a guy who's very calm when other people are watching, but in private, he's super mean to you? He's cruel? Yeah. Does he martyr himself? Because those are the things you really have to look at. It's not just whether the Four Horsemen are present, because there's more to it than that. What are they doing? Who do they protect? Who do they silence? Which one of you has to change? Which one of you never has to take accountability? And I know he's going to say it's you, but I'm asking you that question. What does it protect? So I'm definitely not saying that the Four Horsemen are automatically abusive, but they can show up in all kinds of relationships. So don't listen to things like that and think, oh, that just means it's toxic and it's fixable. Sometimes those things are absolutely abusive. Ask yourself better questions. Look at the difference. Subscribe if you're not already. And if you're in a relationship and you start realizing oh, this is toxic, this is abusive, you can work with me one-on-one. I help women exit relationships like this and rebuild and heal from it. I also host multiple groups and I work with Dr. Peter Salerno. So we host groups over 12-week periods on a variety of topics that you can learn about. 8 to 10 women, the really intimate groups. It's really amazing to help women get out of these relationships and build some incredibly necessary skills. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.